basically we have choice points, and every day you got thousands of these choice points. And you either choose an action that takes you closer to that value or further away from the value.
I want to say these things that are good things, and then they get to hear it and they just don't come out.
Kind of making me tear up now too, and I'm not like much of a crier.
Look at this progress we've made with Andrew today.
Wow.
So this is Kade Curry.
Yep.
And before we get into the types of things you do, because people ask questions like, what do you do? What do you like? I like the question, what are you like? So how would you describe yourself?
Man. The best versions of me are helpful, grounded, and thoughtful. But that's rare. Mostly, I have friends that have described me as, what was the word? It was, uniquely chaotic.
That's
And
good view.
Neil may know me a little bit better than you do, Andrew, so he may laugh a little harder at that. Yeah, chaotic is probably more accurate. Just in, but it's an unhealthy version of me. I don't want to be that guy. So probably a version of like chaotic energy and a lot of striving to stay focused at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what about now just the basic details? Who
Yep.
are you? What do you do? What's your story?
Yeah. So, Kade Curry, I live in Arkansas the last 10 years or so, come from West Texas. Grew up in a pretty typical little household. I like sports, like music, play the guitar, play the banjo.
I did not know that.
Currently learning to play the cello. It's a whole sort of a
Renaissance
self-care.
man.
Yeah.
I tried to, I kid you not, on our wedding registry, I had a cello fund.
Really?
Not a single person donated because I was like, we've already got toasters and microwaves, and we still got a bunch of toasters and microwaves that we didn't ask for and couldn't return.
You can't trade those in for cellos.
Yeah. And I'm still kind of salty about it, but whatever.
It's like they look at you and they didn't have much faith that was going to work out.
And here I am 10 years later, traumatized.
Yeah. So that I in a previous life, 16 years, full-time ordained ministry, just recently left church work, full-time church work, work as a licensed professional counselor. And I run a wellness unit for law enforcement and first responders that kind of mitigate the trauma impact of that job, the unique stressors of that job for them. Married, have 3 kids, one that's about to head off to college. So like the life stages just kind of keep coming.
Yeah.
Flipping through.
Are they going out of state or sticking around?
Stay pretty close. He'll go down to University of the Ozarks in Clarksville. So it won't be too far.
Nice.
But we'll see. He's going to play baseball there.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've got a good film program there too.
Really?
Actually.
I think it's a great little school.
Make some movies. I think they made one with Matthew McConaughey. That Mud movie.
Oh, they made it?
Well, I say they made it. I think they helped with the film.
They participated.
Film students there back in the day. I didn't even know you did the stuff with police, which is really interesting. Neil was just like, hey, my therapist's really interesting.
Yeah.
So
he's a cool guy.
That's a bonus thing.
I'm glad
by the way, he's my therapist.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned that part yet.
I was going to say, I don't know if we're going to get to that. I'm going to have to
do a live on-air session.
How long do I have to play dumb?
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
And, but yeah, so you had some questions.
Yeah. Before that, on the background, you have a master's in divinity, right?
Yes.
Okay, what does that even mean? It sounds so fancy.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So Masters of Divinity, there are some religious denominations that require that degree to be ordained.
Okay.
So it's sort of 3 master's degrees in one. It's about 120 master level hours.
Wow.
It's a 4-year master's degree. You basically get a master's in Bible, a master's in theology, and then a master's in like ministry.
Mhm.
And all of that together is what they call the Masters of Divinity.
Okay.
Sounds
Yeah.
fancy, yeah.
So what was your takeaway from that?
And that I knew a lot less when I had it than when I started, right?
Yeah.
Theology is such an interesting dynamic. I tell people I was a biology major in undergrad, and so when you look at biology, you know the answer. Right?
Mhm.
It's a diagram. You just label things, and this does that, and that does that, and then you get into theology, and there's actually not any wrong answers as long as you can kind of support your answer.
Mhm.
So it was like such a shift, but you just get through it. And I really thought I'd probably get in there and like, well, I know this now, and I know that. And then when I got out, it was like, I don't know. Oh, wow. I was like, I don't know
You just had
anything
more
more.
questions?
Yeah, I just had more questions, which
Yeah.
I think should be the point, really.
Mhm.
Just have more questions. Probably a much more open faith stance, and
Yeah.
that we should all get to.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
You see the masters in divinity, you're like, this guy knows things.
Yeah.
But it's probably a
He actually just knows what questions to ask you.
yeah,
Yeah, and hope that you're willing to do the work. Yeah,
it's really
it's
cool.
good.
I
Thanks.
know we kind of talked about this 2 days ago we had a session
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about we hit on it very briefly, but the different therapeutic approaches, the models behind them, and
Mm-hmm.
how kind of maybe they all boil down to the same thing. Is there one that you stand by? Is that important?
Question.
What's behind your therapeutic approach?
Yeah, so I mean, at the base level of all of it is sort of that counselor-client relationship. I think all the research will point to that being the motivating factor for change mainly is do I feel like this person cares? Do I care about them? So that relationship is important. I call it positive therapeutic alliance. Um, so I think a lot of therapists will tell you if you have that, it probably doesn't matter your modality.
Yeah.
What's funny though is the modalities typically like they'll, for example, I just did a training in a therapy called internal family systems. So internal family systems kind of operates from this idea that there's parts within you. All of those parts are sort of protective or have different roles. They've been created either in trauma or created out of need. And as you go through your life, ultimately though, you're trying to repair the relationship between part and self.
Mm-hmm.
And if you and sort of what you're always looking for self energy. But what's funny is all like even like more tactical approaches. EMDR is a real favorite of some.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. You're using sort of you're using the brain to sort of make these connections, but the connections are healing connections so that self can be more, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting how the concepts feel all similar, and we use different language and probably different like viewpoints to get there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I just want to throw this in because I'm a big proponent of acceptance therapy. So acceptance therapy says we don't try to change you or who you are or aspects of you. We want to accept those things. And in accepting them and noticing them, then the person within you that notices, which is more you in context, you can see yourself in context, then you get to decide what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you may say, well, there's that thing I do. Yeah. Oh shit, there's that thing I do. But that doesn't give me the outcome I want. I'd rather do this. So,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it's all about if you look at it through all those lenses, it's like, oh, we're doing the same thing. We're just building people up more from the inside out, empowering the self,
Mm-hmm.
and then having somebody like there's somebody else in this world that cares and can get on your level and connect. I think that's all people need.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
a huge part of it.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Great question.
Yeah. Well, we got more, so we're gonna keep them
I'm-
coming. We're gonna
I'm
keep
good.
them coming.
Who should go to therapy? Like, should everybody go to therapy, or yeah?
Mhm.
What's
It's a great question. I I think you're going to hear most people say everybody needs somebody
Mhm.
needs to get a confidential place to really show yourself, right? To like say I don't know you anything as a therapist, right? And you're here for me, so let me just like That's why that positive therapeutic alliance is so important. They can start taking off layers and say, okay, here's who I really am, right? But most relationships in our culture, especially, you end up like you just can't. That's not as clean, right? Like you end up like I don't know, like you may need something from me. I know the guy that you know, and it's like I got to protect parts of myself so I can't really be me in that moment. So anybody, however, I will say that um, I prefer, I'll put it this way, I prefer clients that want to do work, that are ready for something. I don't care. I don't care what you're ready for. What do you need? What are you ready for? What do you want to do? What do you want to change? What motivates you? What are you noticing that doesn't feel great? What version of you do you not want to be? Any of those questions. But I do occasionally get somebody, well, so-and-so says I need to go to therapy. So here I am. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to work on? I don't know. Like, I think other people suck, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
I can't help you with that. So I think people have to have I think really it comes down to is anybody with any self-awareness should probably go and do therapy. It would be beneficial. But if you're not in one of those places, or you don't really want to make change, you could try, but
Mhm.
I think we're all going to be stuck with you.
Mhm.
If you're not ready or willing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
I feel like I hit the jackpot with you.
Oh, I
Like
love that.
we get along great. I would consider you a friend,
Mhm.
you know, but it's difficult for me to tell other people, yes, absolutely, go out and get a therapist because you don't know who these people are.
Yep.
There's a lot of advertising out there now, especially, a lot on podcast platforms and stuff, and you don't know what you're getting into.
Mhm.
So how should we, if we're encouraging someone to go see a therapist, how do they do that? Do they choose based on a model that this person has,
Mm.
or how do you go about that? I have friends that would be open to it, but I'm hesitant to say, yeah, go do it because I don't know where they're going. I don't know who that person is. And if you had been an 80-year-old man that didn't give me any feedback, that wasn't in a similar didn't have a similar view or openness to the world, it wouldn't
Yep.
work for me.
Yep.
It would not have been beneficial. So I got lucky. So what do I say to those people, and how should they seek out finding a therapist?
Yeah. So first things first is a therapist. We should be professionals. So we should be able to carry that load a little bit for you. I'm not as good at this as a therapist, honestly, but I like to remind clients every once in a while, like, hey, don't worry about me, right? Like, this isn't about me. Don't worry about my feelings. And unfortunately, as you're doing therapeutic alliance, right? Like, you need me to be present. You need me to be myself. But then there's a line there, right? Because it really isn't about me. It's about you. As a client. So I would tell somebody, I'd say like, hey, don't hesitate to have a need there. Like, say to a therapist, like, can you do this for me? Do you think this is something we can do? Don't be afraid also to walk out and be like, yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to work. Like, I didn't vibe with the person. Maybe you give it a session or two, maybe three, but that's okay too. Like, I really don't get my feelings hurt if it's happened a few times. The client comes back, hey, I don't know if this is a good fit. I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. Let me, based on what we've talked about, I actually kind of have a better idea for you. I've got somebody else. So I think word of mouth is good. Ask people that you trust, who's good for them. Be willing to like stand your ground and like advocate for yourself, like what you need. As far as modalities go, that's kind of tough because I mean, I like to use a number of different modalities depending on what presented to me in session, right? But there are therapists that kind of see themselves as in one lane. So you kind of got to kind of sniff that out. Um, for law enforcement guys that I do referrals, they just they're like, I don't want to do that work. Just, can I trust you? Which I take that really seriously. Like if I'm going to refer you, I'm going to take responsibility for that referral. I tell them a lot, like, hey, here's some names. Go look at the bios. Go look at the picture. Go look at their face online.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to just look at it and go, that's not going to be my therapist. I can tell you right now. Or another one says, ooh, maybe that guy or that girl looks really interesting. So I think it's a combination of all those things. But I would really encourage people, we can handle ourselves as professionals, as far as like, don't feel like you need to appease us. Do what's best for you, and put it out there, and then find it, and then do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't be afraid of a couple breakups. I
Yeah.
saw this a lot in the first responder world. People, we encourage, go to therapy, and they would do it, and they would just butt heads with the therapist, and like, well, that was stupid. Why would I ever do that? And they just quit.
Yeah.
And we don't do that in dating. Like, it's a very similar situation. So try again.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. Like, I feel like I'm hurting their feelings.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's important. Like, I hurt my feelings if it's not a good fit. I want what's best for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
And with the COP program, that's just go into that some, because that sounds very interesting. Because by sort of by nature, to be in the line of duty, you have to be a bit hardened and be able to deal with a lot of stuff. And so, how do you help people soften up and pull back some layers and start bringing up some of these things?
Super great question. Like, that's why I really like this acceptance model therapy, because for law enforcement, the thing that they need to be safe on a scene, or to be safe when they get that call, is they need hypervigilance. They need to be able to compartmentalize emotions. So, like, man, I'm really emotionally tied into this scene right now, but I can't be, right? Because I have a job to do. So I can't think of the human aspect of that thing. So I got to dehumanize the moment. But from therapy terms, like, we don't really like when people do that. We don't want to decompartmentalize emotions. We don't want to dehumanize situations. We want to go here and now, and I want to know how that feels, and I want to pull that out. So what we like to say is, like, we can't fix, or we can't take away those tools that you need for the job. So we say, okay, let's accept the fact that you're going to have to emotionally compartmentalize sometimes. Let's accept that. Let's not try to change that in you, right? And then you try to teach the system, like, their central nervous system has to know. We have to kind of, like, if we're going to go there emotionally, we've got to tell the central nervous system that it's safe to do that. And we do that with a couple different modalities, EMDR, trauma processing, different things, just to kind of like, and what you do is you exercise that enough, and now you've got an officer that actually can control that pretty well. He can emotionally compartmentalize at work, and then when he's at home with his wife, all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, this is one of those moments where I have to, like, I can actually care, and I need to care, right? I can't just shut down and shut off. But it takes practice. But yeah, those dynamics are interesting, because we can't eliminate the need for what we might say is unhealthy tool, because it's actually needed for the job. Yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
And I know there's all the privacy things. I don't know how the laws work, but
Yeah.
are there any stories you can share in a vague way of just how people have been really helped by that?
Yeah, like help me. What's interesting to you, right? What's interesting to you, like, because I have a ton of stories. So what would be interesting to the listener or to you guys, as far as like a progress? or
Maybe
something?
like a really hardened guy who wasn't open to
Yeah.
talking about things, going to you, maybe he
Yeah.
was forced to go to you and it worked out.
Yeah, really good. So what comes to mind? I'll just go with what comes to mind. 25-year sergeant type, So here's what I get all the time in law enforcement, mental health. They say, "Hey, bro, like, nobody's going to talk to you, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then we go down the road about a half mile, and they say, "So, I got a question. I want to ask you about this thing." And I'm like, "Yeah, nobody's going to talk to me."
Yeah.
Um, like, 25-year sergeant guy comes in to the office, and he says, "Hey, I got to talk to you." Like, okay, he's nervous. He doesn't really want to talk to me, really, but I don't think he knows where else to go. And, like, now my position's there, right? So he says, the other day, I was at a restaurant, and a guy asked me about my daughter who just had a baby. And he said, when he asked me about my daughter, I just started crying in the restaurant. I'm just bawling. And he's like, it was so embarrassing. My wife's like, my wife's never seen me do that in 40 years. And he said, however, rewind, I'm at the hospital a few weeks before that. My daughter just has the baby, hands me the baby. And he's like, I couldn't feel anything. And he's like, I have no idea. Like, here's what they think. They go, a number of them say, am I broken? Like, is there like,
Mhm.
am I never coming back? Am I never going to be able to be human? Right? That's the fear. So one of the things that when you say like kind of progress that immediately brings healing is when I can say as somebody that they trust, I can say, hey, that's normal. Like, what else could we expect from a 25-year guy who's had to do this all like his career to stay safe? Like,
Mhm.
let's not be too hard on you right now. Here's what's happening. And so we can show them, we can even map out parts of the central nervous system. Like they don't they don't know, right? They don't know that the cognitive brain and the trauma senses of the self, trauma brains, don't communicate, right? So like he's thinking like, but I know I should care about my daughter's baby, but I don't. Like, yeah. Your system knows that that's a precious thing, and as a cop, precious things we don't think about because we could lose them. They die. They could, things happen. Really hard things happen. And so if you've seen it happen out there, guess what? It could happen to you. So you're going to automatically protect yourself and emotionally. And so when I say that to them, they're like, well, that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Like, and they're just like, so there's nothing wrong with me? Nope. We just got to help your system figure out which is which. That's all. Okay, let's do that. And so
I love that.
it's yeah, and then we're off and running, and they're open to it, and that in of itself, they'll go home and tell a spouse like, I finally saw Kade helped me see a view of it that made sense. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
okay,
I mean, that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense to me.
there you go.
Had a very kind of similar experience when first kid was born. Just felt very. Part of it was just the adrenaline rush and making sure everything's okay, but just very emotionally detached and feeling weird that I should feel more emotional, but just trying to, control the situation. Is everything all right? Then, so yeah, I can relate to that.
Yep.
What else was on your mind? We got some questions too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that acceptance has been huge for me
Hmm.
too. Some of the things that have taken me multiple sessions just to like bring to you and say it. And once I say it, you're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
what else? I'm like, oh, that was the whole thing.
That's it.
You're supposed to tell me I need to change now, and these are the 10 steps that I need to take to get right. And it
Mhm.
hasn't been that. And it's this weird mind game that you just sit there and you're like, I'm okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Because most of it for me has been just telling myself that I'm so broken and I'm not human and I didn't feel this or I felt this too deeply or I have a bad habit or whatever. And so it sounds silly sitting here talking about it without people and dates and specifics, but it
Yeah.
really is, it's been huge for me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, and um, bet you won't. People listening, I bet, can relate in some way to if they've done some sort of therapy that was helpful. I bet it had some aspect of that
Mhm.
permission and just sort of acceptance model stuff. It's
Yeah.
good.
And I think that's a huge hurdle for especially guys to get over too, because they expect to go there and there's going to be this sweet little lady and they're just going to talk about your feelings and how you need to feel more and you're not feeling correctly and you're not listening and
Yeah.
you need to take all of these steps to fix yourself. And it
Mhm.
hasn't been the case with us. And it's helped me grow and fix a lot of those things, but it hasn't been through X, Y, and Z steps. It's been through, okay, that's a thing about you, accept it, and let's move forward.
Yep.
What else?
I tell clients all the time, and I get it, but like if I tell you, like I really like this. I know you're gonna maybe plug this later, but I really like this
Yeah.
non-alcoholic gin
Monday
here.
gin. It's
Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah.
You want to plug it now?
Sure.
Let's do
I
it.
mean, it's Monday's one of the like higher end ones, and I've really enjoyed. They got a rum, they've got a whiskey, an alternative whiskey, and the mezcal, and they're always rolling out new things. So so far this is like the top tier of the ones I've tried. There's some other really good ones. Ritual is one of the big ones, but this one's taking the cake so far.
Yeah, you got me. Like now, I'm just thinking about this. Where was I? Something about acceptance, right?
Yes, acceptance.
Um,
Guys not wanting to go, thinking it's something that it's not.
yeah, I don't even know where I was going.
Well,
with it.
I might be able to take you somewhere.
Okay, help me.
Because I feel sort of like a case study. A lot of things you're talking about, like that sounds a lot like me.
Mhm.
Where
Oh.
I'm pretty in tune with my emotions, I would think. It's hard for me to express them. I feel things deeply, but can't always get them out. But I I'm the kind of person where if I'm my wife will ask, don't you ever just want someone to listen to you, just to listen and be understood? And I'm like, no, I can't relate to that. If I'm talking about a problem, there's 100% chance I'm looking for a solution,
Yep.
And is that, but then I'll wonder too, like you're saying, well, is something wrong with me? Should I be more, cause I'm sure the way that I perceive, the way that I operate, well, I'm positive that it can affect how I interact with others, because I'm maybe not as, I don't know, empathetic or um, that's not even a question. But
So no. So, and
say.
I'm going to get back to that because, and I'm going to address that directly. But I remember what it was. I was going to say, like, if I told you that, like this, I love this little drink that we have. I've never tried this before. If I told you that, that this was your favorite drink, and I said, hey, don't think about Monday's, 0 alcohol gin. Don't think about it. Whatever you do, don't think about it. Right?
Okay.
Now, what are you thinking about?
Well, I'm trying to think of a purple elephant.
Yeah,
That's what you're supposed
but it's
to do,
hard, right? Right? Yeah, but it's hard because now I've only drawn attention to the thing.
Yeah.
So what I tell clients a lot of times with acceptance model, right, is if we're in a replacement model, and I say like don't think of the thing, then most clients can only think of the thing. Like, well, you tend to be this way, right? So just don't do that. Well,
yeah.
Well, I'm stuck now because I feel like that's all I am right now. So I see it as like when we try to eliminate something, it becomes a monster. The problem can get bigger. So think about that on an anxiety level, right? So I have really hard anxiety. Yeah, bro, just stop thinking about your anxiety, right? Like, oh, now it's a big problem, right? And so when we say, oh no, that's like, listen, that's just anxiety. No big deal. Like, we know what to do with anxiety. You're just anxious. That's that thing you do. And you get anxious about these things because we'll find out. We figured it out over a few sessions. What are the themes and cycles? Okay, so that's that thing you do. Now, it's like a little puppy. Oh, there's that thing I do. It's so cute, right? So going back to what you're saying, okay, so I'm emotionally unavailable sometimes, right? Like, or mostly, mostly for you, which is pretty. Like, think of the Type A cop or first, right? So it's like, so acceptance model, we might say, yeah, okay, cool, that's all right. Like, what's cool about it actually is, and we see this all over, the thing that you're like, I don't want to be that as much. It actually, we can eliminate it because it's the thing that actually, in a lot of arenas of your life, it's the best thing about you. It's what makes you. Your wife probably thinks you're, whether you are or not, thinks you're probably just, hey, he's a pretty consistent dude, right? He's not a lot of ups and downs, right? Because why? Because kind of stay there emotionally.
Baseline.
Yeah. So she likes that about you, but then occasionally doesn't want you to be it. So acceptance model, we'd say, yep, so there's that thing you do. We don't want to change it. We don't want to fix it. Like, okay, good. But then we say, what type of husband do I want to be? How do I want people to experience me? What's a version of me that can be that, but also do the other thing, right? And so we can kind of build that, and then we have a model. Acceptance therapy specifically has a model where basically we have choice points, and every day you got thousands of these choice points, and you either choose an action that takes you closer to that value or further away from the value. Further away might be to close down emotionally. And that's that thing you do. It's actually not a bad thing. It's just not going to get me where I want to be right this second with my wife or whatever. 6 out of 10 times, if you choose toward your value and even away from your natural sense, right? But that's okay because it's natural. You kind of manifest this thing, and your wife goes, it's been really nice to connect with you lately. This is weird. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that feels good. See? And you did it. And you might still, like, in the back end of everything, you might still be like, I feel like I'm still the same guy. Like, yeah, that's the point, right? But you're still able to make a few choices that can highlight things you typically didn't used to be able to do. So yeah, there you go. There's your There's 6 weeks of therapy, right?
Yeah. And a follow-up question to that. I'll have to tip you or something afterwards. Just like getting a free session. But because one of the main problem that I'm currently facing is that I'm not a very encouraging person, like verbally. I'm not mean at all. I never fight with people. I've never raised my voice at
Yeah.
my wife or my mom or anything. But my wife talks a lot about needing more just emotional appreciation, and I feel things, but it's like there's a trap, like a door, and I just can't get it out. What is it? I'm sure that's happens to other people. Well, what is that trap for one?
Neil,
and how do you open the door?
Neil sees me. I'm watching Neil, and he sees me like my spidey therapy senses are like I'm wanting so much to do work here. But like theoretically, right? What I would want to do if you were a client, I don't know where that connects, but there's definitely connections. We would want to look at early childhood things, tribal, what I may call like tribal rules or legacy burdens, like things that people handed you, like this is how you do things. This is how you emote. This is what's appropriate when you emote, right? This could have been something simple, like just one person in your life that typically does it this way, or handed you some sense of like, it's more polite to blank, right? And so those are the things built in you that your system's like you said, I feel it, but then there's like a trap. I don't know, but like I bet you if we spend enough time exploring, digging around, like shining our flashlight back in the corners of Andrew, you'd probably say, oh, you know what? I wonder if, and I'd go, yeah, think about that, right? And so what I find with most clients is that, and people, like not just clients, but people, like the more information you have, that's why I think self-awareness is so key. Like the more information you have about yourself and like why you tend to react this way or do this or do that, or even why you think this is the way, that's the way, they need to stop doing that. Yeah. More just flexibility is real important. Self-awareness is important. And then once you have the data within yourself, you can kind of do whatever you want because you're not stuck with just the reaction that you typically have. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and again, you just like, where does that come from? I don't know, but I bet we could map to it somewhere. I love, my favorite thing in therapy is when a client says, when there's this epiphany moment and the client says, I haven't thought of that. Like I know exactly where that connects now. I'm like, oh, okay. Most of the time I don't even know what that means to them. I don't know what it feels like. I don't know what that does internally, but you send them on their way with it and they know what to do with it. They're resilient. So they come back and they're like, yeah, it helped a lot. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So it's really, I think it's super interesting to map that out. Is that important though?
Yeah.
Because in me, I do the same thing. I think a lot of guys do it, maybe people in general, but I know I've talked to other guys that are like, I want to say these things that are good things. And then they get to hear it and they just don't come out. And I do that too. I don't know where the map goes back and connects. I don't know what the root is, but I know now when I have that feeling, I recognize it and I call it out. And that's enough for me because I go,
yes.
Oh, this is the thing I do. I need to say whatever it is that I have to say right now.
Yep.
So
that's a great point because I don't think you have to. And so it's so funny, right? Because I do have clients that are like, I don't really want to do that work. Okay, let's not. It's okay. I think there's other ways to get to a place. Others really want to know. So hearing you, Andrew, it's like, I also have to think like how left brain is the client, how right brain is the client. My client's very left brain, statistical, analytical. One of the things I like to do is try to exercise the right side of the brain with them, right? Great quote here. I'm glad I thought of this. Had a professor at JBU in the counseling program. He said, counselors are like dermatologists. Have you heard me say this?
I think so.
If it's wet, you dry it. If it's dry, you wet it.
Okay.
That was it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if they're too much in their feelings, start them thinking a little bit. If they think too much, help them to feel. It's like, huh, okay, there you go.
It's ironic you bring that up because I, last night, part of why I'm sleepy is because our hot tub, the chemicals are off balance,
Yep.
and we were in there for a long time, and I could not sleep because I was so itchy.
Yes, there you go.
So my wife had to rub lotion on my back, and it still didn't even help that.
I'm telling you, that's the rule. That's a rule to life, right there.
Dermatology.
Mhm. One of the wonders of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I addressed all that, but I hope that.
No, it was more of a thought. I don't know what
Mhm.
the question was in there, but
Mm.
I think you can go two ways from that point.
Mhm.
You go, okay, I acknowledge I do this thing where I tape my mouth closed when I want to say something, and you can go backwards, or you can address it and say, I want to do this next time it comes up.
And I think I'm right in saying this. I'm sure there may be some other professionals that hear this. Maybe I'm wrong. But behavioral models, that's their job. Like their job is to say, if I take an action, I'm going to get a feedback, and the feedback tells me whether I want to take that action again, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is I may not be able to map it, but if I can stop and notice in the moment, and then if I emote a little bit and my wife gives me the feedback that feels good, then I'll probably do that more,
Mhm.
right? So you could argue that in a behavioral model, yeah, do I have to understand the who, what, why, when, and where? Probably not. I just need to figure out how do I stop in the moment to do the new thing, and then I think behavioral models would say if you get the feedback, you're more likely to continue to do the new thing. Yeah. So
I
cool.
like that.
And obviously everyone's a work in progress, but is there a way that you felt mentally or emotionally not whole, and that you've come to a place where you feel a lot more just with it, like a way that you've overcome these things in your own experience?
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a mess most of the times internally. Do not go to a therapist that doesn't have a therapist. Like that's a rule.
It's like the Jedi.
Yeah, that's right. I have my own guy. Yeah, so what comes to mind when you say that, it's a really important part of my story. I was in church work, 16 years, full-time church work. And I think that growing up, my dad was a Baptist education minister. And so his dad was a Baptist preacher. My uncle was a Baptist preacher. My cousin's a Baptist preacher. So there's like I feel like a lot of assigning of value. If you have value, you eventually will be one of these, right? And in the way I grew up, it was like, you're either in ministry or you're not, right? And if you're in ministry, like you're doing the right thing. And if you're not, like, what went wrong?
Yeah.
And so I think even at 37 years old, to give myself, I wasn't okay. I was not okay at multiple points in my journey as a pastor. Pastors have a tough job, and there's really good people that can do that job well. I just, if you asked church members that I pastored, they'd probably say lots of good things. I didn't feel great as a pastor. I didn't know it for a while, but at some point it was like, I got to save them and me from this. And so I stepped out. My dad had just passed away. COVID had come, and it was like, I got to step out. So when I gave myself that permission, right, to just say, am I okay not being that? Like, do I still have value if I'm not a pastor? Man, that felt good. My wife connected to me in ways I don't think I could have ever imagined. My kids could have cared less that I was a pastor or a Swans man or a UPS driver. They didn't care. I went to my kids and I was like, hey, y'all, it's just going to be a big deal when I do something different. And they're like,
What?
no.
You're still our dad,
We
right?
don't care, actually. It'd be a lot easier on us, to be honest. And so I think just like permission and self and trusting that gut thing that I had that said, this is not fully you when you put on this mask and you're in this role. Like, it's okay just to go find where you fit. Like, you fit somewhere else probably. But yeah, is that,
Yeah.
yeah. So it'll help you see in there. That's a lot of my own processes that I do try to share with clients, not specifically say those words, but I think when I reflect back certain things to clients, they think, okay, well, I don't know where it comes from in Kade, but he gets it, right? So that's a little bit of my story.
Yeah. And ultimately, people are talking about their lives and their problems and whatnot because they're trying to live a meaningful life. And so what, from your experience of just bearing a lot of those things and hearing from other people, what have you found are common threads, both in your own life and in your practice, of what really matters to people at the end of the day?
Yeah. Gosh, that's good. Um, I think it's interesting because I was talking to some other therapists recently about if we just had like 4 bins, I don't know what we would label them, but I think most every client's issue or reason for growth could fit in one of the 4, right? Because there's not a lot of crazy intricacies to this thing. It's pretty much we're all looking for some of the same things. Um, I think I think healing, and I keep bringing. I know it's kind of vague, but this self, like I think self at its purest is connected to something bigger, probably. I don't know what that is for most people. I don't care what that is for most people, but whether it be nature, actual, God, some version of God, but they connection to I think self is connected to that, and self is like just free to like from all the burdens of like influence of people and expectations. And so it's interesting. I think a lot of people are trying to balance like the expectations given to them versus um more realistic ones maybe. And if you it's so like I literally feel as a therapist sometimes I should just write permission slips. Like you have permission
Yeah.
to not do this thing here. Boom.
Yeah.
You know? And then really? Yes, you can choose not to care.
Mhm.
But yeah, some of the things that are so burdensome to people. I think too, like it's so I see it through a trauma lens though, so it's hard like as a trauma therapist, a lot of times we talk about this sort of version of self that hasn't been touched yet, hasn't been, doesn't know that it has a need, right? I want to get people back to that. Like whether it be a childlike thing or whether it be an innocence, just a general innocence that like you're safe in the world if you and you can trust some people, right? We need people we can trust. We need to know that we're generally safe in the world, and with people and in relationships, and that not everything's our fault. You know, like think of a kid who mom and dad get divorced. This happens a lot. I'll say to a client like, "When's the first time you knew that you had a need in life?" I don't know, probably about 8. Like, well, what happened when you were 8? Well, mom and dad got divorced. Oh, great. Like, yeah. So what was the need? I don't know. I kind of felt like if I could have just been better, mom and dad would have stayed together.
Mm.
I mean, I think we all kind of like walk around with those really, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why would you, like, and mom and dad would never have said that that was kid's fault, right? But we all have this idea in our head that it's something was our fault. You know, it was on us, it's on me. So I'll just shame myself for the rest of my life. And so just getting free from some of those things. It's not a great answer to your question, but that's the essence of it, I think. Yeah, some version of that. Mm.
Yeah.
So self, how do you define that? How can we think about that? Is there an image? Is there a description?
Mm.
Because we're even working on it, and I kind of get it, but
Yeah.
it's hard to label a thing like that when it can mean so many different things to that person walking it out within themselves.
There's a guy that I do some trainings with. I don't do the train. He would know me, right? But Dr. Frank Anderson, if you look him up, internal family systems, and he has a couple interesting one definition. He just says it's an essence, which it is an essence. Like you just know when you're in
Mhm,
self,
mhm,
right? Some of the ways that I think he would say that he knows, he might ask the question like, "How do you feel towards yourself?" Um, he calls them like there's a number of C's like compassion, creativity, connection. So if you have compassion for yourself, you're closer to self. If you have, if you feel connected to yourself, if you feel compassionate, if you're creative, if you're feeling creative, like you're probably in some version of self, right? It's when but think of how most people aren't any of those things
yeah.
with self, right? You
Mhm,
say, who are you? It's probably a list of issues and problems and things they could do better,
mhm,
right? So, I think my best answer is some sort of like essence of to me, I would even say like, this is going to be a bad answer, but it's like grounded. Yeah,
Mhm.
am I grounded in this? Like, do I feel centered? Do I feel like I got both feet on the ground?
Mhm.
That I'm present? I mean, those are all so vague. That's such
Yeah. Yeah.
counselor
Right.
talk, right? Yeah. So sorry. Um,
But
but
that I mean that
It's hard
makes
to
sense
articulate.
because I
it's
mean
hard to
I've still
articulate.
got loads of issues to work on, but in my 30s now, I feel like I've got 2 feet on the ground, figuring things out. Whereas in 20s, it feels like you're just on like a tiny ship in the ocean during a hurricane, just slamming against the walls
Yes.
and like falling out of the water and hold it or to the boat and just holding on. And now it's like, oh, we're just smooth sailing for the most
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
What's interesting is, and we could do a whole podcast on it, but um, there's a lot of literature out. Trauma we should look at trauma as um, as a motivator for growth, not as an detriment or like a ding or like I'm wrecked, right?
Mhm.
So think about society. The people that have been through some of the most traumatic things often get to self sooner,
Mhm.
right? So you have some guy, that's typical Western culture guy who hasn't had much go wrong in his life. He's like 50 years old and probably doesn't know himself very well. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
probably sailing along, probably has a family and all the things. But if you ask him what's important to him, he doesn't know. He's probably got a little bit of a drinking problem. His kids don't like him very much. His wife puts up with him, but they're not going to get divorced because that's not what you do. You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, that's
Describe 50%.
Yeah.
of the world, yeah. And that's not bad. Like, good for you. You've created something that works. And if that client sits in front of me and says, "I'm good," like, okay, you're good. That's fine. Like, it's good enough for me, right?
Mhm.
But then you get like the kid who had really hard things happen at 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12. The female client that was literally like sexually abused most of her teenage years. They don't have that luxury. And so it either kind of crashes in and never kind of, but I think that's where that's where real things step in, and you say, hey, let's use this as growth. Like, what does this teach you that makes you like, what can we use your trauma as a superpower for you?
Mhm. Mhm.
And people that do that are like, they're super powerful people. You probably could look at like top executives in Fortune 500 companies. They probably are very highly trauma impacted people in their past, and they used that to propel them into places. So, post traumatic growth is a term right now that's catching on in mental health, and it's changing the way that we look at how people have been impacted by trauma, instead of seeing it as damage, like, oh, you'll never be the same again, but we'll see if we can help you get by.
Mhm.
It's like, no, man, if you can get the reins of this, where could this take you? Yeah.
Mhm. So you're human. You have off days.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of us, maybe we just don't go to the water cooler and talk with the coworker, or if we're working from home, we just chill. What do you do on a day when you don't feel your best self, but you still know you have to be there for other people?
Mm-hmm. It's tough, Neil. Like, it's tough.
How much can you admit to the
No,
to our 30 subscribers?
I will try to admit it. Yeah, don't. Yeah, yeah. That's tough. Like, even this morning, I'll be honest. Even this morning, like walking out the door, my wife's name is Jenny, so Jenny and I are kind of like at odds about something, and then I call her on the way to work. So I'm like, I knew that was dumb, by the way. Like, I should have just let the day happen, right? Just call her on the way to work, and then in my head, I'm thinking, I can't go to this podcast thing. Screwed up in the head today. I can't go. So, and luckily, we're able to. We are able to communicate much better nowadays, almost being married 20 years. But there's days where, yeah, I'm just not like I've had family members pass away recently. I'll tell you, we had a dog that tragically died a month ago, and I told my wife the buildup of all the trauma from law enforcement helpers, like helping the law enforcement people. My position, I have a lot of access to what they get to see and do. And then this dog passes away, and I told Jenny, I said that the reaction I'm having is way more than just a dog passing away.
Yeah.
This is a lot of built up stuff. It's difficult. It's almost like a curse though to know what I should do, as a therapist,
Yeah.
but not be there, like where I can do the work, right? Or just like, and then it's set, shame sets into me. Like, you should know how to do this. You should be better. Like, you shouldn't react this way. Your kids, you can't be impulsive and yell at your kids. And so yeah, it's just, what do I do? I have a few battle buddies that kind of that I can say to them, like, I'm working on this too. This is that guy thing y'all were talking about. I'm working on being able to actually say what I need.
Yeah.
And say, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm not okay today. I don't know what I need, or I do know what I need, and here's what it is. I've got 3 or 4 people I can say that. And typically just saying it is helpful. Got my therapist, who, it's weird. He just does therapy different than I would, which I'm glad, because I don't even think about doing therapy when I'm the client in there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what he's going to do. Yeah. And so that's probably the best. But I go practice the cello. I go watch a show. There's this, I think sometimes it's just like, if you can do the thing you want to do. What would you do if you weren't upset today? What would you do if you weren't like, oftentimes I'm feeling very, as a 2 on the Enneagram, like I feel like I do enough for everybody, and I'm left alone. Yeah, I'm very resentful at my worst.
Yeah.
Just resentful at people that don't care. Yeah, because I care. Why can't other people care? And I just like, what would I do if I wasn't resentful right now? Right? I would be walking the dog. I would be doing the thing. Okay, so do that. Right? And typically, those immediate things go away. But yeah, I know that version of me very well. And it's not pretty sometimes, to be honest. Yeah. And I think you just got to build your own resources around you. But I do think it's maybe even harder for us in the helper sectors.
Yeah.
Not just law enforcement, first responders, or podcast makers. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you approach friendships with clients?
Mm.
Is that even something that you think about much? Is there a hard line that you draw?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
Yeah, good question, Neil. So here's something that I have to tell myself, because I want to be a friendly person and I want to be friends with clients. And I do think there's a way to have friendships with clients, and not all clients are going to want that or need that. And that's something I have to sort of like think through. So one of the things ethically, I don't connect with any clients in social media. So that's kind of an ethical boundary. If you're a client, then I'm not going to, I may be able to message here and there, but I'm not going to follow your page. I'm not, I don't, if I can help it, I'm not going to have you follow my page. Because then again, clients like, hey, I saw you went to this thing. Okay, well, it's not about me right now. Right. So, and here's the way I think of it. What's best, like, I have to do what's best for the client. I just have to. So, clients have friendships. If they needed a friend, they would just have me as a friend, but they need the relationship is different. The relationship has a built-in confidentiality. It has this built-in, like, it is a little slight difference in friendships. Neil, I think you'll be okay. Like, we had a situation where, we had to pass off some stuff, right? And Neil even felt awkward. Like, do I go in the building? Do I not? Because it's not a session.
We're not in the office right now.
Yeah,
I'm
so what do we
scared.
do? And so you just got to navigate those things with clients. And I have to be careful. It's mainly confidentiality I'm trying to protect there. It's not, people in the community know what I do. So if you're my friend, that maybe protects you. They think, well, you're not a client, but then, that could get in the way of the counselor-client relationship. So I want to protect the client's need for a therapist and not a friend. But there are many aspects to the counselor-client relationship that feel and should feel like we're friends, right? I do have a few, like, I have a past therapist that we are no longer in a counselor-client relationship, and we are friends. So I think there's ways that relationships can stay in touch and change. But we just have to think of them ethically as what's best for the client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of what I needed was a friend. So
Yeah.
it's worked out.
Yeah.
But it is something that I think about too, because I want to be respectful of you, not get you in trouble. You're a professional.
Yep.
I am paying you for a service.
Mm-hmm.
So it is something that I think about too. Of
And
like, I don't want to push Kade to a point where he has to tell me, hey, like, step back a little bit
yeah,
because this
like,
is my personal life.
I can't be your friend. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
But we've had those. You and I, you build that positive therapeutic alliance, and you can have those relationships, or you can have those conversations real easily.
Mhm.
You and I have had conversations about like what that looks like, and I can admit to even a client like I have a need for friends too, and then they say, "Oh, me too." It's like just that in of itself feels validating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
especially as a guy.
Yeah.
And this is one of those questions where I like asking people, what does it mean for you to have made it in life? And obviously, you've
Mm.
never gotten just to the top of the mountain, but it's always a journey. But what would it, in your mind, what is, we'll tie in the self, like
Mhm.
your highest self that you're aiming for?
That's good. What comes to mind when you say that is that the people. Okay, this is going to come from my son. This is good. He's 17, about to be going to college. I asked him one day. I said, "What do you think happens when you die?" You know, and he was probably 14 at the time. The smartest answer ever. He says, "I don't know, Dad, but I know two things. I swear to you, this is what he said. We were driving to Missouri. He said, I know two things. I won't know until I die. And he said, the people that love me will miss me."
That's good.
Yeah. And I was like, well, shit. That's great.
That's good. Yeah.
And so to answer your question, when will I know that I've made it? When I think of my wife and kids, especially parents, sister, family members. I think all that matters to me now at 41 years old, especially losing my dad. You lose somebody kind of tragically. I was 36. My dad was 66. And you think, man, like I have no regrets. Like there was nothing unsaid in that relationship. But it's like I just want when I'm gone, I just want my kids to think I did a good job. Yeah. So for me, it's just here. Maybe this is it. If I died today, the people that love me would miss me.
Mm,
Hmm.
Like it.
that's a good answer.
Okay. This one's zooming way out. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts
Okay.
on this one. Overall, I know this is a huge topic, but the state of therapy, counseling professionally in America or in our region more specifically, whatever you want to say, what is the state of that? Where are we at mentally in America as
Good.
far as you can see?
Yep. Good question. Couple of things come to mind. One is we've seen the rise, right, in the awareness of and need for mental health
Yeah.
interventions,
Yeah.
right, and especially in these like I just came back from a conference, the Association of Chiefs of Police conference in Louisville, Kentucky. 1,500 people from probably couple 800 agencies are sending people to figure out wellness for first responders. That's huge, right? That same conference 4 years ago had 200 people. So that tells you 200 to 1,500, it's growing.
Yeah.
The awareness and the stigma is coming down in a lot of areas. So that's huge. I don't think modalities are changing a whole lot. I mean, there's a few new things popping up. But for the most part, the art of therapy is in that magical positive therapeutic. That's not going to change, I don't think.
Mhm.
We've had some pretty big industry standard movements in the last 20 years, though, with EMDR and other modalities. But I think the danger that we're seeing, though, too, is as you increase awareness, there is this phenomenon where you increase unnecessary need for mental health. So people will take trauma and different things and then assign like assigned symptoms and they think they've got them maybe. There was a study done with a couple of high schools where they went in and they brought awareness to a couple key mental health issues, and then they polled everything like a year later, and the number of diagnosis in those areas went way up in those high schools just because now they know that it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So are we saying that the majority of those people didn't actually need it? No, but we had to be careful not to create victims in the mental health space. So we want to say to people like, this is not something that we all have to have. It's not something that we all have to, that we need. We don't want to have clients even that kind of wear their therapy as a badge of honor sort of thing. Like, we want you to heal and grow and be done. I want to work myself out of a job, you know? So there's good things with the growth of mental health sort of awareness, and then there can be some dangers as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And what advice would you give to, you're a father of a young man, we're relatively young, and I think a lot of, obviously women have their mental health stuff too, but what advice might you give to young men in general who are just maybe saying, I want to get more in tune with myself and my emotions and become a better person? Because we talked some about just the concerning rise of people like Andrew Tate, where you think this doesn't really seem like a healthy masculinity, and trying to find alternative role models or just ideals to strive for. So what advice would you give to young men?
Yeah, like it's not as hard as you think, right? Find somebody that, ask around. I bet if you ask 10 guys, 2 of them have a good therapist that they like, right? So find out who's out there that feels safe from a therapy standpoint. And my big thing with law enforcement is like, guys will say to me all the time, like, well, I don't do that. I don't care about I'm fine, right? And a lot of them will say like, that getting your emotions checked in or helping, that's the easy way, right? Like, I do it the tough way. And I go, actually, that's the opposite, right? To just live with it is kind of the easy way. But to just do some work on yourself is the hard way, right? So it's not the easy way out to do emotions. It's not the easy way out to do therapy. And you know, they use different words. It's like, I'm not going to be a wussy or stuff. But bottom line, I would just say like, just, you might be fine. Like, just check in on yourself. You might be fine. Look at your relationships. Look at your relationship with your kids. Impulsivity. The number one thing I get in clinic a lot of times, especially with first responders, is irritability. We're just irritable all the time. Okay, well, we don't really have to talk about your emotions. Something is coming online in you that we need to calm down. What is it, right? So I think it's not about emotions all the time. We don't have to change you. That's that acceptance model. No, we're not changing you. You can be the same macho, deer hunting, beef jerky eating guy, right? Doesn't matter. But, we don't change you. We don't make you softer. We actually sharpen you. It's the iron sharpens iron, guys. Like, what do you have to sharpen iron? Iron. So what do you have to sharpen a guy? Like, not candy canes, right? So that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna say, what do you need? What are you trying to do? We're not gonna make you into something that you're not already. Yeah. So that'd be my message.
So awareness is what I hear.
Yeah.
Right.
Awareness.
Sitting with yourself and diving into the things that you're feeling.
Yeah, that's good. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
If you can be aware and you think something's off, why not listen to yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
Much.
The past 2 days, I've had some things where I've been really angry, and I recognize that in myself. But rather than sit with that, why am I angry? Is it me? Is it pride? Is it someone else? Is it conditioning? Rather than do that, I go, today's a bad day. All right, we're gonna have a bad day now, and I just go with that. And if I could point at something or just sit there and think through it, but you have to humble yourself and come down from that red phase.
And I think that's why it's the hard way, because if really in counseling, what are we doing? We're sitting with pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can either push pain away, which is easy,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly harmful eventually, or you can sit in your pain.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of man is better?
Mm-hmm.
One that can sit in pain or one that runs from it?
Yeah. And that's so much of what I've been learning. And I haven't had the super traumatic childhood or past. I haven't had a lot of bad things in my life, even
Yeah.
a lot of deaths in the family, really. I've been very blessed. So I've had to create a lot of, not issues isn't the right word, but I've had to make a lot of decisions where I could have stayed in a place where my head was in the sand and I could have been that 50-year-old guy that, things are fine,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But and this isn't like patting myself on the back. This is thanks to you and people around me and circumstances, whatever. I've made decisions that have made my life harder, but I'm learning now when you sit in those places and you recognize it and you try to kind of unwind it, untangle it, you learn so much and you grow so much that that would not have happened if I was comfortable.
And but you're doing the work.
Yeah.
You got to give yourself that credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 1,000 questions to
Okay.
ask. I don't want to get us out of here
Yeah,
too
yeah.
soon. So I want to leave you with the maybe last question you might want to, or if you have anything
Yeah.
for 'em.
So I have two more questions.
Okay.
One is super simple. What are 2 to 3 things that any human being can do on a daily basis that will make them feel better? That will improve mental health. Simple things.
Sleep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sleep.
There it is, Andrew.
There it is.
Sleep cycles and the way that sleep cycles interact with our ability to be self-aware, to be grounded, all of those things is huge. It's a huge problem in shift work and again, like first responders and lots of men, non-first responders, we just work all the time, working too much. So all of those little things about sleep, the way we eat before we go to bed, what we drink before we go to bed, and how we don't have screens in front of us when we try to go to sleep. All those things can be really helpful to progress. So that's one.
I can plug in real quick because
Yeah,
we've done
plug
this
it.
before for the people listening. He'd had us do this exercise where you close your eyes. This is a simplification, but like you're going up a mountaintop, you're trying to leave things behind. You're trying to see what the universe or God says to you. And the thing that I got was just go to sleep.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm tired and
Yeah.
I'm working
Yeah.
from like sun up to sundown. So
We did a little exercise before we came on for the podcast. Yeah.
anyway, but I'd interrupt.
No, that's
Second.
good. That's one. I think two is like just there might just be so in that first category is just the basics. We know hierarchy of needs. I can't do harder work on myself. I can't do relationship work. I can't deal with love and value and feeling loved if I don't have the basics. Sleep, eat, shelter, all those things. Whatever you can do to help yourself have what you need to stabilize. And then I think like risk being vulnerable to the people around you. Risk it. I think people aren't as bad as we think most of the time. So if we can risk it, people will care about us and care for us more than we think. So that's for all people. Self-awareness. Just be checking with yourself once a day. How am I right now?
Mhm.
Right? Just get to know yourself a little bit better. And lastly, probably like, this is good. Moments of awe and wonder.
Yeah,
Right?
I like that.
Find something in the day that you can just stare at for a second and be like, huh,
Mhm.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Look out at a tree.
Mhm.
Pick up a
Gift someone a rock. Kate gave me a rock one time. I still have it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on my bedside
Yeah,
table.
that's it. So you know where this is coming from.
I watched a killer whale eat that great white shark. Did y'all see that
Yes.
video?
I did not see that.
I
That was
did,
nuts.
yes.
Like it looks like a bullet. It doesn't just, sneak up on it and pounce. It's like,
And it just
Oh.
it brings perspective, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it's amazing.
Yep. So there it is.
Yeah,
Maybe a couple things there.
I like that. I think you've touched on it a couple with the advice for young men and with that last question, but something that Andrew likes to end with is kind of a challenge for the listeners.
Yeah, you did kind of give some challenges already.
So you gave some already, but are there any other just general advice or challenges to the people out there listening? with regard to whatever Kade wants to.
Yeah, whatever I'm in,
To make him
in
a
the moment.
better person, live a more meaningful life.
Yeah, I just feel like that moment we had just a few minutes ago, that was special to me. The moment of when I'm gone, I just want the people that I love to miss me,
Mhm.
right? I think that's it. Like you just like, what does that actually look like for you, right? I think if we ask that question, it makes us have to ask like, what's important to them, what do they need, but at the same time, it's like, don't wait around for connection. Don't wait around to be validated. Don't wait for people to love on you. Like,
Mhm.
just go do it. Go be it.
Mm.
And you'll have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, your son saying that earlier was like making me tear up, and it's kind of making me tear up now too. And I'm not like much of a crier.
Look at this progress we made with Andrew today.
Wow. Well, like I said,
Yes.
it's not that I'm not emotional,
Yes.
but I think it hits because even this week being so tired and like working all the time, I think I wanted to be, further in life than I am at this point. And I've been frustrated this week because I've done a lot of childcare, which is it's not the childcare, but being like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. And like, it's, I'm doing all this stuff with the kids and I have these priorities all mixed up of, what matters is, are they going to miss me when I'm gone and not if I built this business or did this whatever thing.
And notice, Andrew, that there was a moment there just a few seconds ago, where you probably felt the trap. Remember? I don't know if I'm gonna say it. I'm feeling emotional. I'm not gonna say it. And then you did. You went there. You said it. You're already practicing.
Working on it.
Doing good.
This feels kind of scripted. It's not. I'm not like a cry person.
No, we did it all. We did it full circle there.
Yeah.
Good job.
But anyway, this is Kade. We'll put links to your website or whatever it is that you do. And thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is my first time to be interviewed for a podcast.
Excited.
And I loved it. It was great.
Good job.